Hi, I'm Charles with AniCap. This is my recap for the anime Deranged Detective. If you like my recaps, please consider subscribing. The story begins as a woman who was a bit too generous with some lipstick, named Amamaya, is furious to hear that there has been a fifth victim and the culprit has the same MO. She urgently instructs her investigators to expand the scope of the investigation, but turns to our protagonist named Totomaro and tells him that he can just go home and sleep. Totomaro portrays a tireless warrior by explaining that he is completely capable of working through 2 nights in a row and he can power through how tired he is. Amamaya doesn't want to be misunderstood and ruthlessly explains that someone as useless as him hanging around will only make things harder. Afterwards, a man named Kiko sympathizes with the discount detective since if Totomaro doesn't show some results soon, he might get kicked out of Investigation Division 1. Kiko reminds Totomaro how much of a garbage detective he is since he was once fooled by a culprit and let them get away 3 times. As if that wasn't bad enough, Totomaro has also had the cops called on him after he went into a neighborhood after dark to get some statements. Kiko likes how earnest Totomaro is, but points out that that side of him makes him a terrible detective. Totomaro shows that he isn't a terrible person though, as he points out that all the citizens are terrified with the serial murders going on, and it's agonizing for him to just stand by. The old man clearly has something planned when he strangely licks his fingers to point out that there are already 5 victims, and there haven't been any significant developments in the investigation. Investigation Division 1 is clearly having trouble, so he thinks that there is only one person who can crack the case. This person is a bit of a sleuth, and he's definitely not an ordinary detective. Totomaro goes to the guy's apartment and admires how sleek the sleuth looks in a picture. The sleuth works as the building manager, so Totomaro wonders if it's because his detective business isn't doing so well. Totomaro goes to ring the bell, but is shocked to hear a voice say, "Don't get your hopes up." A second attempt at the bell, and the voice says, "Do it yourself." Totomaro's confusion only upsets the voice since it doesn't like that kind of attitude from someone asking him for a favor. The voice tells him to go back to the shrine and ask the gods for help again. Totomaro has no clue how the voice knew that he did that, and the voice tells him to go away. Totomaro explains that Kiko sent him, which gets the guy to come out, but Totomaro is shocked by his look. This guy has a clump of seaweed where his hair should be and is all tatted up, which is much different from his clean past. Not only that, his eyes are completely dead now. They don't even reflect light anymore, and even a dead fish's eyes do that. Totomaro welcomes himself inside the guy's apartment and wonders if the guy's cat is dead. It's not, and the guy named Komonohashi explains that he went to school with Kiko's son. Kiko is worried that Komonohashi just sits around crying all day, and he can't say it isn't true. Totomaro panics when Komonohashi smashes his face into the ground, but realizes that the floor is covered in cushions. Komonohashi explains that it's his floor of laziness, and it knows his daily routine of despair and boredom. Komonohashi doesn't have a TV, internet, or even a cell phone. Nothing good comes from the outside, so he cut off the world. He is completely withdrawn and claims that he has hit the depths of despair. He tries to get rid of Totomaro so he can continue enjoying his floor of laziness, but Totomaro tells him that he needs something. Komonohashi refuses without even hearing what it is and explains that he isn't the first to come to him. Kiko has sent others to be his partner as well. Young, brilliant officers only interested in promotions. He turned them all away after knocking them down a peg. It's clear that Kiko really wants to help him make a comeback, but Komonohashi reveals that he is not a detective anymore. Totomaro tries to tell him about the murders, but Komonohashi just screams really loudly to drown him out. Totomaro points out that he's trying to say something, but Komonohashi tells him that that's fine since he's trying to keep him from talking anyway. Still not moving a single inch from his glorious floor of laziness, Komonohashi explains that he doesn't want anything to do with unsolved cases and refuses to listen. Totomaro points out that people's lives are on the line, but the floor-loving jerk states that it's not his problem. Totomaro concludes that Komonohashi is way too depressed and there's no way he would be able to deduce anything. Komonohashi is glad to see him leaving and tells Totomaro that he's better off asking the gods for help anyway. Totomaro wonders how he knew about the shrine, and this is where we get our first glimpse of Komonohashi's brilliance. He points out the pine pollen on Totomaro's shoulder and explains that he could only have gotten that from a specific path near the shrine. Totomaro's unopened can of coffee in his pocket and jangling of the change in his other pocket made him realize that Totomaro broke a bill in order to offer a coin to the gods at the shrine. Of course, Totemaru is amazed by his deduction skills, but Kemonohashi doesn't stop there. The lazy genius uses several of Totemaru's behaviors to deduce that he was raised by his grandparents. He's also able to tell that Totemaru is worried about getting fired, which is why he came for help. Kemonohashi, seemingly unable to put a stop to his own godlike detective skills, keeps going, but Totemaru stops listening since he's already convinced that this way too depressed guy might be able to solve the case. Unfortunately, Kemonohashi continues to refuse, so Totemaru comes up with a brilliant idea to yell the case details as loud as he can. His genius plan is foiled though when he notices that Kemonohashi has earplugs on. Totemaru desperately pleads with him, but everything stops when Totemaru gets a call from his boss. Kemonohashi takes his earplugs out to tell him not to take calls there, but it's too late. Amamiya explains that there has been a sixth victim and their body was found at a park in Shibuya. Totemaru is the closest, so she rushes him to investigate. He prepares to leave but is shocked as something strange begins to happen to Kemonohashi. Kemonohashi explains that once he learns about a case, he can't hold himself back any longer, but he can't be allowed to solve cases anymore. He states that of course he wants to be a detective. Unraveling mysteries and solving cases is what gives meaning to his life. Not being able to makes him feel like he's going to go insane. That's why he cut himself off from the world, avoided people, and lived as a hermit by being a day sleeper. The problem is that he has a fatal flaw as a detective. A truly troublesome one that no doctor has been able to fix. Totemaru, showing off his probably not so good detective skills, deduces that Kemonohashi must be sick. His body must be incredibly weak and frail, which is why he made the floor out of cushions. Kemonohashi demands that he leave and states that as long as he takes sleeping pills to knock himself out for 3 days, he will be okay. Totemaru refuses to leave without him since he doesn't want Kemonohashi to waste his talents and points out that there is nothing more important than stopping criminals. Kemonohashi tries to tell him that that's not the issue, but Totemaru begs for Kemonohashi to trust him and promises to back him up however he needs. Kemonohashi can't believe how naive he is as he calls him a fool, but does agree to help. However, he tells Totemaru to listen carefully as he explains that no matter what, Totemaru cannot take his eyes off of him. Totemaru, clearly oblivious to what's really going on, promises to push Kemonohashi in a wheelchair if he starts feeling sick. Kemonohashi has no clue what he's talking about and informs Totemaru that they will be running to the crime scene. The run has Totemaru questioning his life choices, showcasing his undeniable talent for couch marathons over actual ones, and Kemonohashi explains that he stays fit as a hermit using the gym he built in his apartment. They are informed that the victim was a private investment broker named Okamasa, and he was on his way to a business party the night before. Kemonohashi then shocks everyone when he gets up close and personal with the stiff. Even more strangely, he begins to speak to it. He asks it how it could drown in a place with no water, and why did he hand over his valuables without a fight. The policeman is shocked since Kemonohashi has no knowledge of the other victims, but seems to know a lot about what happened. Kemonohashi explains that corpses want to talk and you just have to learn to listen. The white froth on its mouth indicates the possibility of drowning. Clothes show no signs of struggle, and his suit shows that he was wealthy. The tan line on his wrist says that his watch was stolen. Totemaru seems to just now realize what a good detective looks like, and is amazed to see that he's totally correct. Over the last 9 months, 5 people have been killed at irregular intervals with that exact MO. All their valuables were stolen, but they had no external injuries. Testing revealed no alcohol or drugs in their system, and they were all found drowned in places with no water. Kemonohashi looks at a map showing where the victims were last seen and where they were believed to be going. On it are a date, a celebration, a class reunion, a wedding, and a birthday party. He uses it to narrow down the search area, but Totemaru points out that there's nowhere in that area with enough water to drown in. Still not realizing that he's terrible at his job, he also points out that he can't even think of a place where a grown man can be drowned without him putting up a fight. Luckily for Totemaru, Kemonohashi isn't useless like him and has thought of a great place where that could happen. He's glad to see that he isn't rusty, even after a 5-year hiatus, and celebrates with his new friend. Everyone is shocked to see him be so casual with a dead body, but he explains that it's just his style. He states that if you treat them with respect and kindness, the dead will open their hearts to you. Kemonohashi tells them that it's time to go, and shocks everyone once more when he reveals that it's time to arrest the culprit. Totemaru can't believe that he already knows who it is, since the police investigated for 9 months and couldn't crack the case. The master of deduction explains that that's what he's there for, but Todoromaru still can't believe it took him only like 3 minutes. Kemonohashi calls him Todo and tells him to get out some money as they leave. Moments later, they're at a clothing store where Todo finds himself dressed up like a pimp. Kemonohashi tells the rapper Wannabe that he'll be going undercover as a wealthy man, and they will also have to do something about his hideous head of hair. They go to get him a haircut, and Todoromaru states that he will probably fall asleep since he has worked 2 nights in a row. Kemonohashi is surprised to hear that he isn't the only idiot that has stayed up 2 nights for work, but recommends that Todo should stay awake. Todoromaru begins to think that Kemonohashi might be a bit unstable and wonders if he should really be following what he says. I guess he just ignores that feeling as he heads inside and prepares for his haircut by removing his ridiculous looking coat while Kemonohashi enjoys some black sugar syrup outside. The barber is amazed to hear that Todo has done well in the stock market and has him put his head in a shampoo station. After a moment, the man checks to see if Todo will respond to him, but Todo doesn't say a word. This barber is clearly evil as he begins to fill the basin with water to drown Todo, but Kemonohashi arrives to stop him. He explains to the sinister stylist that lockpicking is a hobby of his, just as Todoromaru emerges from the water. He tells Kemonohashi that he held his breath for a minute just like he told him to do, but he still has no clue what is happening. Kemonohashi explains that he was going to be murdered in a way that only a barber could pull off. The genius detective then reveals his deductions. None of the victims had any drugs in their system, but they didn't put up a fight either. The secret behind this is that the shampoo station was filled with oxygen deficient air with an oxygen saturation below 18. If a person takes a single breath of air when it's less than 10, they faint. This could easily be achieved by using some dry ice. If Todoromaru had breathed in, he would have passed out and drowned. The next clue was that the victims were all men whose hair was growing out. They all had big events lined up like parties and reunions that they'd naturally want to look good for, so going to a barber made sense. This absolute genius of a human being then narrowed things down even further by determining that it had to be a shop targeting new customers, so he focused on places in the victims' overlapping areas of movement that accepted walk-ins. The scene of the crime also had to be somewhere people couldn't see in from the outside, and somewhere you could get dry ice nearby. This guy's barbershop fit all the criteria. Kemonohashi is almost done showing off his 1000 IQ when he states that the barber profession lends itself to chatting up clients so the killer could learn all sorts of things about his victims. To use that against him, Kemonohashi had Todo dress in expensive clothes and tell a story about hitting it big in stocks. He made him play exactly the kind of wealthy walk-in the culprit prefers. The murderous scissor wielder who just stood there and listened to that entire speech just now realizes that they are cops and tries to run. The detectives corner the psycho barber and he explains that he was murdering people for the money. Todoromaru is disappointed to hear he killed 6 people just for money, so the barber explains that he doesn't feel guilty at all since he was screwed over by the rich first. He has crippling debt, but Kemonohashi couldn't care less, and he shocks Todoromaru when he tells the barber to jump off the building. He states that someone who devalues the lives of others has no right to keep living in this world, and instructs him to jump again. Todoromaru can't believe what he is hearing, and we see that something happens with Kemonohashi's eyes that makes the barber agree to do it. Todo is worried that people might listen to Kemonohashi when he makes crazy demands like that, and sees that the barber is actually going to do it. Kemonohashi writhes in pain, so Todoromaru is left to try and stop the man. Kemonohashi seems to snap out of it, and Todoromaru explains that the man jumped. Kemonohashi is completely beside himself as he exclaims that he did it again, and wished he never trusted someone else. However, he's shocked when Todoromaru tells him to stop muttering and help him. Kemonohashi is clearly a genius, but even he can't believe that Todo managed to save the culprit. Kemonohashi wonders if without any hesitation whatsoever, Todo put his own life on the line, but then realizes that isn't it at all. Instead, it's the opposite. Todo's just a pure naive fool, and his body must react before reason kicks in. Todoromaru wants him to stop talking to himself like a lunatic and help him, but Todo ends up falling. Just before gravity can introduce Todoromaru to the pavement below, Kemonohashi saves them both. He proudly announces that he has changed his mind and now feels that there are infinite possibilities. At his house, Todoromaru's mouth nearly drops to the floor as Kemonohashi reveals that his flaw is actually a sickness where he kills the culprit. He explains that he has no conscious memory of doing so, but apparently he always pressures the culprits to their death. By the time he comes back to his senses, it's too late. That's why his solved case rate is an amazing 100%, but his arrest rate is an insanely low 0%. That's why he was forbidden to act as a detective and why he cut himself off from cases. However, Todo has broken his disgraceful streak, and it's clear now why Kiko sent Todoromaru. What Kiko must have realized was that Kemonohashi doesn't need some brilliant partner at his side. What he needs is a pure naive fool. Todoromaru realizes he is this fool, and Kemonohashi tells him that they will be partners. He tells him to bring every case he stumbles upon to him. Kemonohashi explains that he will let Todoromaru take all the credit, so starting today he will be a great detective. A look into the past shows a classroom full of shocked students. They all gasp in amazement when they see that one student managed to crack a case. The murder was a cold case and everyone said it would never be solved. They all agree that the new student is unbelievable, the greatest the school has ever seen, and begin to wonder how he can understand how criminals think. This feat was so incredible that the professor explains that once this student graduates, it could be the end of unsolved cases around the world. We find that this student was Kemonohashi. He was flattered by their praise and stated how devoting himself to becoming a detective was his life's calling. Back to the present, Todoromaru goes to see Kemonohashi and is surprised to see that the once sad, depressed loner is now excited to hear what their next case is. He hopes for a case that will send his heart dancing, but there really isn't one. This bad news sends Kemonohashi straight to his floor of laziness, where he mumbles frantically. Todo tells him to speak up, so he does, but it's only to call Todo useless. Kemonohashi tells him that he is wasting his overflowing passion for solving mysteries and the greatest talent Blue has ever seen. He explains that Blue is the world's preeminent detective training academy, and an incredible 100% of the best detectives graduated from there. The best of all of them was Kemonohashi. He had the top scores and they said he was the greatest genius to ever grace the school. This is incredible to Todoromaru, but Kemonohashi explains that something went terribly wrong. During a practical exercise, all of the suspects Kemonohashi went after died, which put him under suspicion. He was expelled from Blue and barred from obtaining a detective's license. A detective's license is a passport he needs to solve the toughest mysteries. Without it, he is not permitted access to any case, and if he breaks the rules, Blue will punish him with death. Todoromaru, a genius in his own right, points out that Kemonohashi was just investigating the case he just solved. Kemonohashi says that that was unavoidable, but from now on the surface, Todo will be doing the investigating, while he controls Todo from behind the scenes. Todo likes the idea, but doesn't like the sound of being controlled. Kemonohashi apologizes for his poor choice of words, and explains that what he meant to say was that Todo is his puppet. Things won't be so bad, as Kemonohashi states that all he will do is conceal his identity, go with Todo to crime scenes, and give him instructions. Todo wonders if he could just do that over the phone, but Kemonohashi refuses. He wants to pay his respects to the dead and meet them for himself. His plan sounds great in theory, but Todo explains that he isn't the one who decides who the big cases go to. That's his boss, Amamiya. Kemonohashi, who has practically become one with his beloved floor of laziness, instantly starts doing his genius detective thing on a picture of Amamiya. Todo is in the picture, so he wasn't the one that took it. The reason neither of them are looking at the camera is that it was taken in secret. He is correct, and Todo explains that a coworker, who says he wants Amamiya-senpai to step on him, sent it to him. Todo reveals that he's scared of Miss Permanent Scowl, and recounts what happened earlier that day. A body was found, so she prepared to investigate it, and the always eager Todoromaru asked to go with them. Miss Neversmile declined, but gave him something else to do, and put the assignment in his binder. Kemonohashi is surprised to hear that Todoromaru is taken seriously enough to have his own binder like the others, but Todo explains that it's just filled with odd jobs or low priority cases. People secretly call it the trash bin. Kemonohashi surprisingly gives comforting words when he states that one day Todoromaru will have the last laugh, but instantly kind of ruins it when he hilariously adds, one day the trash man will rule over all of humanity. As for today's trash, Todoromaru explains that there was a report about missing money from a piggy bank, and it ended up at Division 1 by some mistake. It's what could be called an utterly impossible crime, but Todoromaru assumes that Kemonohashi doesn't seem like he'd be interested in the theft of small change. He couldn't be more wrong, however, as this case surprisingly manages to peel Kemonohashi away from his trusty floor of laziness. Kemonohashi instantly disguises himself and explains that the duty of solving cases everyone else has abandoned falls to him, the most talented man in Blue's history. Todo steps on his seemingly dead cat, but Kemonohashi tells him it's just sleeping. At the scene, Kemonohashi introduces himself as Kamu, with Piggy Bank Emergency Services. It seems like Todo wasn't informed of this as he freaks out, telling Kemonohashi to pick a normal name, since if he is found out, then he is a dead man. Just then, Kemonohashi mistakes a pink suitcase for the piggy bank. They note how big it is, and the homeowner explains that it belongs to her older sister who just returned home. She directs them to the living room where we find that Kemonohashi knows way too much about piggy banks. He's amazed by this model as it's the one with a rubber valve from which it is completely impossible to remove coins, the impregnable pig. Toromaru's amazed by his knowledge, but the genius detective reveals that he just used Todo's phone to Google it. The pig isn't the most popular color, and the girl explains that it's all her local store had left. She begins to explain that she noticed it was lighter when she returned home the day before, but Kemonohashi interrupts her when he gets his mustache caught while looking at her older sister's jewelry. Toromaru wonders if he only came to get in the way, but Kemonohashi points out how strange it is that the thief didn't steal the exposed jewelry. That's not all that's weird, as the girl reveals that they were getting a lot of silent calls recently. This makes things incredibly clear for Kemonohashi, which makes Todo think he has cracked the case, but he actually says that he gave up. This is because an impregnable piggy bank in a locked house is truly an utterly impossible crime. Just as Toromaru is shocked to see him chowing down on undiluted black sugar syrup, the older sister arrives. She explains that she was visiting her parents and she thinks that her younger sister is just imagining things. Toromaru thinks that she didn't really provide any new information, so Kemonohashi wonders if they should just chalk it up to a trick of the mind. The little sister becomes frustrated as she is certain she didn't imagine anything, and exclaims that the pig was as heavy as an iron statue before. That's exactly what Kemonohashi wanted to hear, and states that if that's the case, then they should break the piggy bank open. After they do, the girl is certain that there was more change in there, but there's no way to be certain. She goes to count it, but Kemonohashi instantly stops her. He explains that Todo will be sending them to forensics for fingerprinting, and shocks Todo when he says he will be going for a walk. They meet up later just as Toromaru is told that the younger sister's fingerprints were not on any of the coins. Toromaru is shocked to hear that Kemonohashi expected that, but way more surprised to find that they are at Amamaya's crime scene. She reminds Toromaru that he wasn't supposed to come, but Kemonohashi doesn't even address her and shocks everyone when he goes into the crime scene. Kemonohashi finally addresses her, but it's only to ask what she would do if Toromaru solved her case. Angry boss lady will allow him to try, but explains that if he can't make her happy, then he is fired. Kemonohashi doubles down on his shocking behavior by getting up close and personal with the corpse again. He tells it that he is glad to finally meet him and vows to avenge his death. Kemonohashi tosses a bag to Toromaru and tells him that he is up. Moments later, Toromaru addresses everyone and begins by solving the mystery of the piggy bank. Amamaya wants him to just skip that part since petty cases like that have nothing to do with Investigation Division 1. Toromaru is startled, but Kemonohashi quickly retorts that it was a case from Investigation Division 1's trash bin. Toromaru proceeds by explaining that, according to the forensic results, the coins in the piggy bank only have the older sister's prints on them. The older sister assumes that it means that only the money her sister put in was stolen, but that can't be since you can't take money out without breaking it. Toromaru struggles to answer, but Kemonohashi calms him down and reminds him of the little gift he got Todo while on his walk. Toromaru explains that getting the coins out without breaking the bank is impossible, but replacing a broken one entirely isn't. Everyone is shocked as he explains that there weren't fewer coins inside because they were stolen, the previous bank was just broken. And in order to hide that, someone purchased a replacement and put the other coins inside. He accuses the older sister, but she points out that she wouldn't have to hide something like that and would just tell her little sister. Toromaru is flustered again, but Kemonohashi points out to him that his voice is beginning to crack and calms him down once more. The recomposed Toromaru explains that her reason for hiding it is right there on the riverbank. He shocks everyone more as he states that it was a murder. Things really come to light when he explains that the man was her stalker and he was the one making the silent phone calls. He waited for her one day and chased her into her own living room. There was the piggy bank as heavy as an iron statue, so she struck and killed him with it. When she did, the piggy bank shattered and blood got all over the coins. In order to conceal her crime, she bought a new one and tried to fill it with other coins. That's why only her prints are on them. Finally, she brought the body there. She used the suitcase in the entryway to move it. Given its size, it's far too large for just an overnight stay with her parents. Amamiya can't believe the two mysteries were connected, and Totemaru's just relieved that he managed to say everything. The little sister refuses to believe it all, but the older sister crumbles under her own guilt and admits to everything. Totemaru tries to point out how it was the stalker's fault, but Amamiya explains that concealing a murder is still a legitimate crime. Before anyone can even digest what just happened, Kemonohashi shockingly steps forward and tells the older sister to go drown. He states that someone who kills another and hides it has no right to live in this world. Totemaru is stunned to see that Kemonohashi is doing that thing where he pressures criminals to death, and doing it right in front of everyone. Amamiya strangely admires how cool what he is doing is, but Totemaru rushes in to tell everyone that he's just talking to himself. Kemonohashi is still in that mode as he tells her to drown herself in the river, and we see that his eyes have hypnotized her. She rushes off to drown herself, and Kemonohashi can't help but repeat the words "go drown" over and over. Amamiya stops her for a moment, but the girl gets away. The older sister repeats those same words and begins to drown herself. However, just then, our impulsive protagonist acts without thinking at all and dives in after her. After a tense moment, the girl is relieved to see that her sister is safe. Moments later, Kemonohashi snaps back to reality, consumed with guilt when he realizes that he once again pressured someone to take their own life. However, the genius detective is able to find some relief since she is safe, and he has Toto to thank for that. Later, Detective Always Cranky explains to Totemaru that the case has been closed. They found fragments of the piggy bank and the stalker's hair. His blood and prints were also at the house. If they acknowledge that the acts were in self-defense, they may take that into consideration for her dumping his body as well. Totemaru hopes they do, but Amamiya points out that there are more pressing matters, and tells Totemaru that him and his friend violated regulations. Totemaru expects her to completely blow up with rage, but when he lies and tells her that his friend's name is Kamu, she instantly changes her attitude. Later, Totemaru goes to see Kemonohashi and is shocked when he asks for the next case that will send his heart dancing. He says he was just kidding, but it's clear that he wasn't when his body goes completely limp. Totemaru can't help but think that Kemonohashi is really odd. He is obsessed with cases and is unreasonable, so Totemaru never wants to work with him again. Kemonohashi composes himself to tell Toto to hold his head up high, since for a pure naive fool, he did incredibly good work. Toto accepts yet another backhanded compliment, and thinks that despite all of Kemonohashi's flaws, Toto still has a part of himself that is hoping for another difficult case. A part that's looking forward to Kemonohashi's deductions and the thrill of solving a mystery. Kemonohashi wants to mark the day a special occasion, and shocks Toto when he states that it's the day his puppet was born. Elsewhere, Blue's principal, Emi, is asked if she remembers the man named Kemonohashi. Of course she remembers, as he was the man with the highest marks in the history of Blue. She is told that he has been suspected of resuming detective work. The instructor of disguise wonders if that may be the end of unsolved cases as they know them in Japan, but another instructor reminds him that all of the culprits in the case he handled died. They all fear that Kemonohashi may give rise to yet another tragedy, which is why they expelled him and barred him from obtaining a detective license in the first place. The principal makes her decision. Blue's entire goal is to train detectives to ensure that justice is never overshadowed by evil, so they cannot have a detective who kills people. For this reason, she orders an investigation of Kemonohashi, and the menacing-looking tracking instructor volunteers to do it. Thanks for watching the first couple parts of this recap. Subscribe and ring the notification bell for future parts.